Coming to you from the Apogee Grafix studios, this is the Business and Beyond podcast on Next Gen Media. You're listening to episode 41, brought to you by Zapata's Phone Repairs. I'm Ashton.
And I'm Tony.
Dude, it's getting hot around here.
It is summertime in Texas.
Yeah.
With a wet spring, so now it's humid.
Humid, yeah. Well, it's been pretty odd that I guess the rainstorms were holding back the heat. And we go through the first week of June, and the highs are in the 80s. And so we were under the impression, the very false impression, that, hey, maybe this is going to be sort of a mild summer. Maybe we don't hit 100 till July or something, which technically we haven't hit 100
we're
yet.
Damn near there.
But now a week later, here in the, I guess it's the second week of June, when it's at June 13th. Yeah. So it's in the mid to upper 90s every day, and now, like you said, now on top of it is the humidity from so much rain.
Yeah.
That I haven't seen anything, but I bet you it's one of the wettest months of May in at least North Texas history.
Yeah.
But at least we're not in a drought.
That's true.
Going into the summer,
that's true.
We can afford to go a couple of months without some rain.
Yeah. Yeah. Not being in a drought means I can run my sprinkler anytime I want it right now. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, they still have don't they still have some of the restrictions? That's a permanent thing. Are you able to run your sprinklers more than twice a week? I figured they would. I figured they would keep the same restrictions, and then we'll never get into that situation. Although they did just make a new dig a new lake up. If you're not familiar with the North Texas area, in Bonham, it's up by Paris, Texas, so it's outside of the North Texas Metroplex region. But they said years from now, that's going to be a major source where water comes from. But all the rain that's happened the last couple of months, they say it's pretty much full now. Wow. Like they were expecting a couple of years for it to fill up, but that reserve is now full. A reservoir is full now. So hopefully we won't have any Southern California issues here.
Seriously.
With lack of rain.
So like we teased past week or a couple weeks ago maybe?
We teased it on social media, and it kind of ran together with our wallpaper Wednesdays, post.
But the importance of continuing to learn skills. Mm-hmm. Like Albert Einstein once said that once you stop learning, you start dying.
Yeah. And
that really is true. You see signs of that in people in old age that, as soon as they retire and they quit doing anything, they start going downhill. They lose their mental capacity. You just see their health go downhill. But then the ones that are more active, that stay involved running businesses or with good active hobbies, seem to keep that longer, and I think that really is true to continue to expand your knowledge base.
A sense of purpose, and it's just something that's mentally challenged. Like, it may sound great, I get to go fishing every day or get to do this, but if you're not challenging yourself, you can lose a sense of meaning or purpose. I know I had a job when I was in college. I was going to school, I guess at the time. I was thinking I wanted to be a teacher, but I was working in a school district, kind of like an assistant role. But it worked for us when me and my wife just got married, and I was off on summers. And I'd like to think now if I would do that, I would get a summer job or whatever, make extra money. But back then, I was loving the vacation. But after a couple of weeks, you're like, I have nothing to do.
Yeah.
As a kid, when you're out for the summer, who cares? You play video games all day, you do whatever. You don't care. You'll sleep all day if you have the opportunity to. But when you're an adult, it's pretty mentally draining.
Yeah, it really is.
I like to work out a lot more than I used to and stay in shape. And it's not so much that you're tired or you're lazy if you don't want to go work out. You're just unmotivated.
Mm-hmm.
So if you kind of lay around all day and don't have anything to do, you're going to feel tired. You get 12 hours of sleep. and you can just feel like all day drained, tired.
Mm-hmm.
But if you get up and start moving around and doing stuff,
you accomplish a lot.
You feel different, yes, and you feel more motivated.
And even at the end of the day, if you're tired, it's a different feeling that you had a lot of accomplishments. You got a lot done.
If you're used to going to the gym and working out hard, you'd be very sore afterwards. But it's a different, like, it feels good. It's a good sort. It's a productive feeling.
Yeah,
it's the same thing mentally, physically. If you're not working out or doing anything strenuous to some extent, you're just going to feel bland and blah and lazy and tired all the time. And eventually, it's different when you do it for the summer or for a couple of days when you're off work.
Yeah.
As opposed to you're retired and you have nothing to do.
So with a lot of entrepreneurs that we see, and I think a lot of our followers and listeners have side hustles that they do on the side, right? They'll have a full-time gig, and then they'll have something on the side that they're doing that occupies a lot of their time, and they'll spend a lot of that time researching, learning, trying to become an expert in, one form or fashion in that side hustle.
Mm-hmm.
But we've talked about it a little bit and thinking about it some of what if your side hustle became your full-time gig? What if you made a transition, a jump like Anthony's made, where that's your full-time thing? And maybe you're picking up a part-time job, but what are you doing now on the side to expand your knowledge base?
Yeah. I mean, if you're talking about entrepreneurs in general, they are already doing things like that. If they learn about enough about one subject, they're like, hey, I could turn this into a business. I could do. But in general, people have, like, what do you do to escape from your everyday life? Like, maybe
really?
No, I'm not asking you.
Where's the list?
It's a rhetorical question. No, I know you, but in general, if you're listening to this podcast, what do you do? Now, maybe it's play video games. Maybe it's lawn work. I don't get those kind of people. I hate doing lawn work. I mean, I get pleasure from mowing and weed eating, the end product. But in general, it's a drag on me.
Mm-hmm.
I get too busy, let the grass grow too much. I mean, I have somebody that does that right now. Not to push my wealth or anything. I have a yard guy. But in general, I would hate that. I'm like, oh, now I have to mow. Someone's going to say something. It's too much. It looks ugly. But there are people that love to do that. Now, in general, I do this podcast, where we do this podcast. I'm sure there's people that think that's cool that you do that as a side gig. I don't think of this as work at all. Whether we do research or have to find, it's hard to find time to do an episode, to get them in. But I'm sure there's lots of people that just, I'd rather relax in my time, but I find this relaxing. What you should do is learn about new things.
Yeah.
Like, you want to say skills, but in general, if you're not into video games, maybe explore that a little bit. Because I don't want to say empathy, but you can understand people more. Because there's a lot of things like, I don't get it. I don't get why these people do this. It doesn't seem like it would be entertaining to me. But I just don't have any interest in it. Maybe if I actually did it and learned about it, people are like that with sports. Like, I have family members that will ask me, like, they'll try to get into it and watch a game with me, like a Mavericks playoff game recently, and they'll ask questions. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just kind of into it because I followed them for a while, and it's hard to jump into something and be that excited. Like, I could be excited about anything if you learn backstories, and I use the example with cricket. Like, I have no clue the rules of cricket. Something like baseball, but if I study the rules and got behind a local team, or any team, I guess it would be local, but got behind a team and learned their players and learned all the backstories, I could probably get into it. But it's the same thing with any skills. You can be motivated to do anything just learning a little bit about.
And I think at first, sometimes you have to tie those in to maybe what you're doing, whether it's your business or a side gig or
have a reason
your kids'
to do
sports. Exactly. Find a reason. So and some of the skills that we're talking about you can learn aren't necessarily just to improve your business or side hustle.
Mm-hmm.
These are just to expand your knowledge and give yourself kind of that out, that space where you can check out, where some, like you said, some people like to play video games to check out, just to get away from what you're doing. I mean, we talk about Anthony a lot. He's a great example because he's made the jump, like we've talked about, go into full-time in your business, get a side hustle if you need to help occupy time or make up the difference in income. But what is he doing now when he was spending all of his extra time in his business? What's his next outlet? What's that going to be?
Yeah.
So, we're talking about things like learning photography and photo editing, video editing. What are those things? So I enjoy learning about some of that stuff, not as much on the photography side, but some of the video, and partly with the podcast and with the video editing we do for YouTube. I also do a lot of video recording and editing for my son who plays sports, and when my daughter, she's getting into basketball now, when that starts, I'll do the same thing for her, and we'll post and create YouTube. We have YouTube channels for them that we post those things to for family members or, whatever. But it's just kind of a fun thing that I enjoy to do. Years ago, I had a landscape background, and I've recently kind of gotten back into that, enjoying that a little more.
Yeah.
So I found a online course you can do to become a certified organics, to learn the organic processes and become certified in that. And those are the kind of things I'm talking about, is find something that you can become certified in, even if it's completely like out of the norm, out of anything that you're doing that seems crazy. Just go and get certification. Just expand that, your knowledge base that you have.
Yeah, and it helps you to learn other things.
Yeah.
I mean, people think as they get older it's harder to learn things. Your brain's not developing the same way as somebody at school.
Yeah.
There have been studies that have proven that's not necessarily the case. It's when you're in school, your brain's just not necessarily eager to learn. It's just in that mode.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you go to school, you know what you're going to school for. You're going to learn. You're going to go in. You're going to absorb whatever information. And if you're in that mindset, if you're always learning something, whether watching videos or reading, then when other things come up, it's easy to jump into that and learn.
Yeah.
Because you're more resourceful. Hey, I know where to go to search on YouTube. That's my thing. If you're learning a lot of things on YouTube, it's easier to, I don't know how to explain it, but you can search something on YouTube and scroll through and know what videos, hey, this is going to help me, or this isn't going to help me. This is on par, or this is just, this. Or Google. You can look at links and like, hey, that's not what I'm looking for.
And that's as simple, it can be that simple, is choose a topic that you want to learn more about. Whether, like I said, it's landscaping or doing masonry, stonework. I mean, even just for around your house. Electrical work. I know that Anthony, on his game trailer, he did all of the electrical work in that. And I don't know for sure, but I would venture to guess he probably used some YouTube, probably reached out to some people he knew, and took all of that information and put together a system and learned how to wire his game trailer for what he needed. He learned a skill, just like I went through a system and learned more about the organic applications to your lawn. And, I don't know what the next thing for me is, but I'm going to find something else that I'm going to go down that path and learn another skill and expand my knowledge base outside of everything else I do with graphics. And I'll continue to learn that, just like we would, tell anyone with your business. Continue to learn that. But sometimes you need that outlet to help keep your mind fresh and maybe to see a different perspective on other industries or other traits that you can bring back into your business.
Yeah, and it's not a thing like, okay, I just need a break, I need to go watch TV or play video games or do something mindless, which can be recharging and revitalizing in some ways, but it may not be a situation where you're being overworked or overthinking. It's just being burnt out.
Yep.
Like, you could go full on learning one thing or dealing with one aspect of your business, and then you go learn something completely different and study that and read and watch it. And that seems like work, but it's not affecting you the same way. It's completely different.
Typically what that is, it becomes your hobby, right?
Yeah.
Someone that likes to woodwork or craft, or that's a hobby. So it's exactly what you're talking about. It's something completely different, and that's your outlet.
Yeah, and reading is a good example. I know when you start, or here, let me back up before I go into reading. We talk about when you want to start a hobby, you're like, or learn a new skill, your mindset's like, okay, you're going to learn Spanish. Well, there's no end game where this is successful unless you become fluent in Spanish, which isn't true. You don't have to go into that with a mindset that I'm going to master this, because honestly, when Anthony did all that research on electrical work, compared to an electrician, he probably doesn't know a whole lot. But if you compare the whole population, probably top 5%. Like if you take any skill or hobby and you stick to it for a few weeks and learn as much as you can, you probably know more than 80% of the U.S. population in that skill. And that's when you go to reading. Believe it or not, most Americans, most American adults, since graduating high school, has never reads more than a book and a half in the rest of their adult life. So you read a book a year, which is nothing. You read a book a year, you're probably top 5% of the average U.S. adult just reading. I know once you start reading, if you just look at reading as a hobby, because there's so many benefits, it strengthens your mind. Obviously, you're learning whatever you're reading. You know, if you pick a skill and you pick a book on it, I think of that as double dipping. It's got a double effect because you're reading better. You're expanding your mind, and then you're also learning that skill and honing in on that skill.
Right.
But just in general, you get better at things. If you read for the first time in a while, you may read a full page and be like, I don't even remember what I just read. I have to go back and go through that. Although you're absorbing it more than you think, but you're just not actively. But after reading a couple of books, if you read like a book a month or something like that, I've made it a goal that last year I read 20 books, and this year I just want to read 21 or more. But once you've read a book and go on to the next book, you have to look at it in baby steps, just like any skill. Don't look at, hey, I'm going to learn Spanish, and look at mastering Spanish.
Exactly.
You're going to give up before you ever get going, because just look at what's your next step. And mine was, okay, just read something. Whether it's 2 pages a day, 10 pages a day, just open that book every day. Get in that habit. It takes 21 days to master a habit or to get a habit. Open the book and read, whether it's what you have time to read 1 page or 20 pages. But as you get going, you're going to understand it better. You're going to read quicker. And I promise you're going to move through them quicker. And this isn't just talking about reading in general.
Right.
Just
any
skill.
Of the skills we're talking about.
Any of the skills, if you think you want to learn how to, whatever, let's just keep Spanish in there. And you learn a few words, and the next day you're like, I remember this word or this word. But you do it every day.
Learn them and learn how to apply them.
Yeah.
Like we're talking about with video editing, that's something that I enjoy to do a little bit, and I'm by no means anywhere near David Parada. I'm not any
But your leaps and bounds beyond me. Well, because I don't.
Maybe so. I mean, but what I've done is I take baby steps, like you said, and I'm just learning a little bit about it and learning enough to retain what I'm learning, and then I'll move on. Well, let me, I'm going to push myself a little further. Let me try this. And then I'm going to try this. And I'm going to try that. I'm going to try a little bit more. And that's how it really works. It's just starting small, just enough to get the grasp and learn to enjoy it. And then you can expand.
Yeah, and having goals like that, where you say, I want to learn how to do this. And maybe not every skill will have set in stone goals like that. But you could say, hey, I'm going to spend 20 minutes a day or an hour a day working on this. But if you're able to have a clear-cut set goal, I'm going to learn to do this, you're probably going to stick to it a little better than, okay, well, let's open my Babbel app today and let's spend 5 minutes learning Spanish, and then you go a week and let's open it up. Yeah, you're probably not going to stick to it.
Right.
You know, it's something you really have to commit to, and there's not a skill worth learning that's really going to make a big difference in your life if you're able to master it overnight.
Yeah.
I mean, there are things you can do, you know, outside of winning the lottery. Like, if your goal is to make a lot of money, it's not going to happen overnight without hard work. Unless it's something like winning the lottery. Mm-hmm. That's something everybody does. Well, everybody does is they'll buy lottery tickets because of that. If it's that easy to learn that quickly, everybody would be doing it.
Yeah.
And you learn that when things come out. Like, what's a cool new fad? Like, everybody's learning how to do it. Whether it's collecting baseball cards or, you know, which is a big thing now. Not that I'm not going to demean anybody who spends a lot of time doing that and has learned a lot. But I feel like a lot of people have spent a little bit of time to make it to a different tier. Mm-hmm. Where that's where most people
jumping in it.
And there's experts up here,
right?
But that's something you could spend a little bit of time and get into it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, maybe you're not going to be very good at valuing different cards, and because a lot of guys do it for an investment purpose, and those are the guys that are up here that are making money on it. But just to get into it, okay, you just need to. You can get into that pretty quickly. It's not very much money.
But it is something so you can spend your time researching and learning how that works. You mentioned sports earlier, you know, with your family. That's something that you can get into and continue to learn. Learn how stats, learn, you know, in depth about the rules, not just the rules on the surface, but the in depth to it. You know,
and it takes time. I mean, we grew up playing sports, so we don't think of it as research or whatever.
Right.
When we played sports, we understood the basics. We understood the different trends, or this is a good idea to look at it this way. You should, really getting down into the X's and O's of sports and understanding what's a good idea and what's not. As an adult to learn a new skill like that, it takes a lot of. I mean, because we're not gonna go play. I mean, you could go, whatever sport I want to play, I could find an adult team to play it on. But if I'm not into sports, I'm not going to do that for the sheer will to want to get into sports.
Yeah.
And to be passionate about certain sports and teams that I'm at, you can study all you want, but it's not going to happen overnight because it's dealing with staying up late watching these teams play and the gut-wrenching feeling you get when they lose, and then when they finally win, you can be a bandwagon fan and jump on whatever team you want if you just want to experience that. But it's not going to be as sweet when your team wins if you weren't there year after year dealing with the losses. And it's the same thing. You could jump into whatever skill and spend a week on it and be like, you know more than probably most of the population does on that. Because they're not taking the time.
Even skills to learn that could help, say, when you have children, right? So whether they play basketball or baseball or football, or you have someone that's in tumbling or gymnastics, for the parent to go and do the research and learn how to help their child, how to help expand their child's abilities, you have to have a certain knowledge level. But even that, you can do some research on what can my kid do, what are drills, what are things that they can do to become better at what they're doing. And that's another avenue for learning a skill, just to help expand your knowledge.
Yeah, because you're not, if you're into sports at all, but I think it can translate across everything. But sports in general, if you're on a team, you have a set time to play games, set times of practice. If you're only working on that skill and you're allowed at times of practice with the team and the games, I mean, people are different. There are people that just catch on quicker than others.
Yeah.
But you're not going to master it. You're not going to be LeBron James or anything like that. You're doing that on your own.
Speaking of mastering, so like we've all heard that term, that saying of like a jack of all trades is a master of none. We've all heard that. I think everyone's probably at some point in their life has heard that phrase.
It sounds like a negative thing too.
It does, and it wasn't intended that way, but it's because we're only getting the first part of it. There's a comma right after that, and everyone assumes that that's just the end of the statement.
Yeah.
Excuse me. There's actually a comma, and I'm going to read it because I don't want to butcher it. But the actual full saying is, a jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. So
Exactly.
that saying was meant to be a compliment that, yeah, you're not a master. You're not just specialized in one, but multifaceted. You know a lot of things about everything, right?
Yeah.
And even if you are a master, so let's say something you mentioned earlier about, Anthony and the being an electrician, and that, yeah, he's not a master electrician, right? But if you're a master electrician, should you just only focus on learning that skill? Why would you not want to expand past that?
I mean, the lazy, obvious reason is, okay, well, you don't know what the economy's going to do. I was a truck driver. I got my CDL, never to intend to drive trucks the rest of my life, but it was an easy way I doubled my income being from a landscaper to a truck driver, just an entry-level truck driver. I have not been behind the wheel of a CDL vehicle probably a little over a year, but I haven't been in a role as a CDL truck driver in 5 years, maybe 6 years. But I still have that because not that I'm a master at it or whatever, but I have other options. So the economy tanks if my job fires me just because, or lets me go because of the situation with the economy, I can go get a truck driving job.
Yeah.
So the obvious answer is, don't just ignore everything in your life and only focus on being an electrician, because what if, for whatever reason, something happens where there's an overabundance of electricians or not as much of the need for it, which sounds kind of weird because I don't know that'll ever happen.
I don't think so.
But you will have nowhere else to go except for an unskilled laborer.
Mm-hmm. Or what if you hit a point in your life that life just changes for you and you don't want to do that?
Exactly. And you have a backup plan. Yeah, like I said, my example was the lazy, obvious answer.
Yeah.
But no, that's more of a profound answer. Like, what if
I mean,
something happens
joke about like a midlife
lazy.
crisis or something.
You get lazy and you want to change jobs. Well, if you already have this thing you've been working at on the side, or made multiple things, you're like, I don't know what I want to do. I'm just going to quit my job. Or you're talking to your wife, I really want to quit my job. I'm going to go crazy, whatever. You're kind of like, well, what are you going to do? But you have this other options. Maybe it's, I doubt Anthony would ever decide. He's like, forget this job. I want to be an electrician. But he's had experience. He understands what it means. That's a really poor example. But if you have these other things going, like I have a CDL, although I've done it, for a few years, if I just tell my wife, I cannot stay in my job, I have to quit. I'll go get a truck driving job somewhere, which doesn't sound like me because that's not really a passion. But you have that extra avenue.
And
that's another
sometimes
reason
you don't know what your passion is until you try those things. So sometimes you have to dabble in it a little bit and learn the skills of it for something to click and to stick with you, to say, hey, you know what, I really enjoy doing this. About 15 years ago, maybe a little more than, maybe over 15 years ago, I got my landscape irrigator's license. So licensed irrigation, so I can design, build, install irrigation systems, lawn sprinklers.
Yeah.
And when I moved on from I had that license for a long time, and when I moved on, you have continuing education. You have to keep that license up just like any other. And I moved on from that, and I didn't keep it up. I thought, I'm done with that. I'm past that in my life, and I let my license lapse and expire, and it's gone now. And for some reason, I just have had the feeling when I went through this, organics class and things, I thought, man, I should have kept that. And that's really what spurred kind of my push through just learning more about the landscaping that I used to do years ago, that I want to get back into. Is, hey, you know what? I should have kept my license. I'm going to go back and I'm going to get my irrigation license again.
Yeah.
So at some point, I'm working on scheduling. They don't offer the classes all the time, so I'm working on that. That's just another skill I want to add back in and learn. I'm sure a lot's changed in 10 or 15 years in it, so there's a lot I need to learn. But I want to, just go down a skill that has nothing to do with what I'm doing right now, but it's something just to have in my arsenal. Something to fall back on. Something.
What percentage of the population is licensed irrigators?
Yeah, exactly.
Very few. And it just depends. Maybe it's an ego thing, but I like to think about, you try to compare yourself, like where you are with the rest of the pack.
Mm-hmm.
And if you find out you're pretty low, like you test your IQ, like what purpose does it have to know your IQ? But people do it. They go online, they find IQ tests. They just want to see where their IQ is.
Yeah.
And naturally, like, okay, well, where is that with the rest of the, and when you realize IQ is different. I mean, you technically can improve your IQ. Maybe that's a bad example, but if you find out you're kind of lower, the bottom half on a certain thing, you're like, maybe hits you in the gut. You're like, well, maybe I can improve that. I'd rather be, and there's no reason for it all. It's not going to affect your paycheck per se, but that's something that as humans we do. And there's a lot of things I do with looking up free courses online. Just, there's different, not that I'm ever going to go to get a degree at it, but there's some things that interest me. And you're like, hey, they have this course put together. If you want to learn something, if you want to learn about something, what better way to go to? There's actual colleges that offer these free courses, and you can learn in an organized way rather than, okay, if you want to learn about, I don't know, the Civil War or something, or just politics in general. What are you going to do? Start Googling?
Instead of just Googling,
that's a dangerous situation. Like you're learning, getting bombarded with different information where maybe if you start here, dumb it down, maybe you don't know anything about it, you're learning a completely new skill, but it interests you. This is where you're supposed to learn, just like start kindergarten, working. You're not, my son jokes around, hey, I'm going to teach, my 8-year-old son teaching my 3-year-old, I'm going to teach him math. Hey, what's 5 plus 5? It's like, he doesn't know that, but I'm going to tell him it's 10. Like, well, he's not going to, I just remember I'm not doing math in my head when I think 5 plus 5 or whatever, 5 times 5 or anything. It's a memory thing. But if you don't understand how you get to that, you're not going to, you're just going to be overwhelmed and you're going to quit.
And it's going to be hard to retain that information.
Exactly. And if you just understand, okay, well, why did the Civil War start, or why did the World War I start? And most people could probably answer a dumbed down version of that because we've heard it somewhere at some point in school. But do you really understand why that started, that particular war, or why this is this way? Like, to really start and dumb it down to work your way up, that's the easiest way, I think, to learn something. Like, start, and YouTube's great for that because people have YouTube videos or YouTube pages for the weirdest crap.
Everything.
I mean, there's a kid, Ryan, my kid watches on YouTube. All he does is play with toys, and he makes so much money, his parents quit their jobs, and they just make videos with them. Making millions of dollars a year because people watch that. But, like I said, I had my CDL, and truck driving kind of interests me. I'll watch YouTube truckers, and sometimes I kind of get that in my head. It's like, maybe I want to drive a truck. Then I'm like, I remember all the issues. But they have pages for that. So really, I don't Google much anymore unless it's one specific, like who is this person in this time. But if I want to learn a skill or learn about something, I'm going to go to YouTube and search it because there's going to be a video there showing you. And you're not going to spend 20 minutes trying to read and understand.
And a lot of times that's where I will start as well, is in YouTube, at least to start to scratch the surface, and then I'll go, okay, I need to find out more. Then I'll go and look for tutorials, or I'll look for blogs, or
okay, I'll give you an example I just learned the other day, and I probably am going to be embarrassed about this because I have a grill, and I don't barbecue per se, but I can grill burgers and steaks. Like, anybody can if they spend 5 minutes learning about it. So our grill, I was out of propane, or I assumed we were out of propane. The propane tank was low. It just wasn't lighting. I was pressing the button, it wouldn't light. It's like, okay, I can tell it's low. Maybe you just don't have enough propane in it. Swap propane tanks. Still wasn't doing anything. And I could have Googled what were common things wrong with gas grills. But I went on YouTube, and the first thing the guy said is, okay, in this video, it's a 20-minute video, I'm going to talk about all the common problems you have with your gas grill. And he kind of did a preview, like, we're going to go through your burners, this, that. Okay. First things first, if you're pressing the button, it's not doing anything, try this. And he went, and because YouTube, it's a visual. He's giving me a visual. It's not. I don't think I would have gotten the same thing from reading this. He went up to the button, unscrewed it. He said, unscrew this, there's a battery there, which I never knew. I had no clue. You're looking at me because you smoke crap all the time. You're a barbecuer. You're like, this guy's an idiot. But I said, there's a battery. Replace this battery. And if that doesn't work, then we'll go into... So I watched 10 seconds of this YouTube video. I went, unscrewed it, replaced the battery, and that's what it was. It worked. But if I would have Googled that and read articles, I don't know...
They would have taken you through all of the clogged lines or...
And that's what I thought it was. Like, there's an electrical line somewhere. It's probably something simple. I'm gonna Google it. But if I would have Googled it and that would have been the first article I read, I don't know that would have been so easy as somebody, okay, just unscrew this. Look, there's a battery. Replace the battery. I'd like to think...
They would have said battery. You're like, what are you talking about? That's not battery power.
Unscrew the button. Exactly. I probably would have said... But because he
showed you what...
Well, he prefaced it as, okay, this is what we're going to go through. So he went through the first thing. I was like, all right. I'm thinking, is this a fake video? Like, he just unscrewed it. There's not a battery behind there. Unscrewed, there's a battery. And all you grill masters out there, you probably lost all respect for me after this. But that's something that I learned. Like, I don't at all claim to be a grill expert. We own our grill so I can grill burgers or steaks or chicken because it's just better tasting than cooking it inside. But that one little thing, that simple thing you learn about something, you get a whole new respect. Mm-hmm. Like, how much is there about that particular grill that I own in my backyard that I have no clue about?
Yeah.
Because that one little 5-second clip I saw from a video. So I think learning about learning different skills, whether you expect to make money off of them, to get a new job, to start a business, or even if you don't intend to master it, you just want to learn something new. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's like, hey, I'm bored for the next couple of days. I have nothing to do. I'm just going to spend 2 days learning about whatever.
Yeah.
And you learn little bits, whether it's history or politics or electrician work, that you have a whole new respect for it, or it humbles you. You understand that this is a lot broader of a situation than I thought it was, or a subject than I thought it was, because I feel like I've learned a ton about it, but it's just scratching the surface.
It was sometime, I believe, last fall. Our water heater, the element went out.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, great.
The heating element.
One of the heating elements in my water heater went out. So I thought, oh, great. I got to get a water heater. All the worst things went through my mind. I'm like, okay, well, let me go look. Okay, heat's not working. What could it be? Cool. I found some videos. I'm like, yeah, you know what? A good friend of mine is a plumber. Let me give him a call and just ask him what he thinks. Called him. Yeah, that's probably what it is. And, you can go buy the parts at Home Depot. You can change those out. No big deal. He's like, I have the tool to change them. Don't buy it. Just let me know when you're ready and I'll bring it over and we'll swap them out. I mean, that was something for me. Now, I could go to any water heater and probably diagnose that and change that out very easily.
Yeah.
Just from going through that process. And I spent the time to research it, learn about it, learn all the ins and outs of what it could be, and changed them out. Works great, as good as ever. I mean, it's just expanding your knowledge for different skills just helps in general in everything that you do, not just when it's direct to your business.
Yeah.
It can still help your business directly when you a lot of things when we go through school, right? School does teach you, but they also teach you how to learn, how to study. Those are assets that they don't directly tell you, hey, we're going to teach you how to pass this test by how you should study, how you should prepare yourself for it. But when you learn skills like that, it does teach you how to be successful in other ways, or how to research.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
It's something that we're not advocating, okay, go do this because you'll have a problem with it in the future. Go learn about water heaters, because maybe if you have a problem with yours, I mean, that'd be great if you learned a skill, and I'm sure it happens where you have an issue later in life and like, hey, I just learned about that.
Yeah.
But when it came to that, you knew how to, I mean, you kind of had a level head. You were like, okay, there's a quick fix for that, easy fix. You're resourceful. You understand. Your first instinct's not going to, I mean, although you worried you would have to replace the water heater, you weren't going, that was never going to be your first attempt. It was like, okay, let's just go buy a new water heater, or call a plumber and let them charge us $300 for something you can do.
Yeah.
That's basically like turning a computer off and on. But getting in the mindset or in the habit of learning new things or researching things out will help you to be more resourceful.
Yeah.
Like if your thing is to Google something or YouTube something, you can Google and know in your head you're already reworking it. Okay, how is the best way I can word this that Google's going to know? Because you have experience Googling it or YouTubing it and knowing, okay, it misunderstood what I was trying to ask. So you're already doing that, and it's going to save you frustration. And you can scroll through and know, okay, that video or that link's not going to help me. Just because I know that if it's going to have a list or this or that, you can just tell by looking at it without even clicking on it. And you could probably find the best one that works for you. Yeah. So in times like that where your water heater goes out or something, an emergency situation where, okay, now not only do I need to learn something, I'm being forced to have to research something, or I can just call an expert and pay them lots of money because I have no clue what I'm talking about. But it helps you get in that mindset, just like reading or learning new things. If you're right out of high school, it's probably a lot easier for you to. You probably read at a higher level than an adult who's been out of school for 30 years and maybe read one book in their life, or don't do free courses online or do anything where their brain's in the mode of learning. It's like I go to work, I wake up, go to work, come home, eat dinner, watch TV for a couple hours, and go to bed. That's what your mindset is. That's what it is. It's harder for you. You look at everything outside of watching TV and eating after work is like a chore. Is a lot of work. When now, I mean, I don't constantly read, if I have other things to do, but I pick up a book. I don't think of it as like now I have to read. It's
I have a little different perspective. I don't read like I'm going to be honest. I might read one book a year. Last year I did read a little more.
But again, that's top.
Yeah,
top 5% of adults. I mean, one book on average. One book.
I like to find different skills, and I do spend a lot of time on YouTube. And I'm sure a lot of people are like, "Oh my god, this guy just." Our kids spend a lot of time on YouTube. I can tell you, my 5-year-old spends a lot of time on YouTube. She knows a lot of shit for a 5-year-old because of watching it. But I watch a lot, but I find skills. It's like, okay, I want to learn about technology, right? I was going to buy a new computer. So, I called our brother and asked him, hey, here's ideas. This is kind of what I'm thinking.
Again, we always try to tie this in here. Have a good inner circle.
Yeah.
You've already mentioned in the last 5 minutes you called this person for this.
I got the information from him that I could use and be like, okay, now I'm going to go research this, and I'm going to see what he was telling me. I'm going to go, not really fact check him, but I'm going to see what he's saying. How does that fit for me? Or how does
he's going to tell you this sucks. So
I researched,
and it gives you a few steps ahead.
I researched for probably 4 or 5 months before actually pulling the trigger to buy a new laptop. And that's what I would do in the afternoon. I'd get done working. I would we'd do whatever household chores we have, and even if just before bed, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to spend an hour and I'm going to run through a few YouTube videos looking at these different laptops or these different features. And I did that for, several nights for, like I said, 4 or 5 months researching before I found the right fit. And now that I have that new laptop, it seems to be the best fit for me because I took the time to research that. Just like if you were going to buy a new phone or a new tablet or a new car, spend the time to go research that and learn more about that. And you've expanded. You think you're just going, I'm just learning it just to buy. No, you expanded your knowledge base by doing that because now you know a lot about it.
I mean, you can go look up a computer on Best Buy or I was going to say Fry's, but that's no longer a thing, Walmart or whatever, and they'll have all these different specs. And you may have no clue what those mean.
And I didn't understand those, like the CPU and the GPU.
But you can compare two computers and like, okay, this number's higher than this number, that must be better.
Yeah.
But if you don't do the research, which one of these specs is really important?
Yeah, I can go I spec'd mine out to a higher level than base model, but
like, hey, this number is double that number. This must be a great computer.
Do I need to go spend $5,000 on a new laptop when I'm only going to use...
You can see which one's better.
$1,500 worth of it.
Is it worth it?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what we're talking about. That's where your knowledge base comes in. we're not saying not to go and hire a master electrician or a master plumber or call, someone that has the expertise.
Oh yeah, we should put a.
There's a disclaimer.
A disclaimer.
But what we're saying is to spend the time to learn it for yourself, to make sure that you're not getting screwed over by those guys either, or if it's a situation you need them, like changing out the elements in a water heater. My skill level, I knew how to do that. That wasn't a problem. I just needed that reassurance and needed the correct tool.
It'll give you peace of mind if you do that research and like, okay, this is something I have to have a plumber for. It's going to cost me a few hundred or $1,000, but now they didn't screw me over.
If I have a leak in my slab, I'm not jackhammering my slab up to try to do that. I'm going to call a plumber and they're going to.
But if you understand what the problem is and you hire somebody to come do it and they say, oh yeah, this is the problem. They're just trying to upsell you. You're like, well, no, I understand. That's not the issue.
Right.
Exactly. Because I looked at the heating element thinking that was a problem or whatever, but that helps you understand those little bits of different things and appreciate the process more.
Yeah.
I mean, knowing the value of things, going back to the computers and knowing, okay, yeah, it's this one's 10,000, this one's 5,000. This is obviously a better computer, or 10,000 is a lot for a computer. I just said those numbers out loud, but this is 1,000. This one's 500. Yeah, this one's better, but what are you using it for? What are Wouldn't it be better? Is it $500 more better for you?
Yeah,
it's value for you.
Exactly.
And knowing that you do things like that. If you have a problem, you're going to research it. You're going to look it up. So when that problem came, you were already in the mindset. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to. It puts you. You didn't think of it as a chore. You're like, okay, cool. This is going to be a fun. I mean, the water heater was out, so you obviously weren't happy about it. But when I go to research something, like I was watching a video. Me and my wife were watching a video. I don't even know why she was interested in, but it's about how America got involved in oil in the Middle East. Anyways, they were talking about how this oil guy, blah blah blah, and he had all these sons, and Osama bin Laden was one of the sons. And it goes into why Osama bin Laden got pissed about everything with America. And I'm not doing it justice by paraphrasing this, but I watched it. It's like a 20-minute video. I'm like, I knew nothing about that. So I jumped on Wikipedia. Like, I know that's not the best resource, but I understand Wikipedia, how to move through it. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, there's a lot of factual things. So I looked up, okay, Osama bin Laden. Oh yeah, that guy was his dad. And then I researched that. I mean, not researched. I just spent 5 minutes reading through it. It's like, okay, a lot of that stuff was pretty factual. But I do stuff like that. If I see an not outrageous, but it sounds outrageous meme, whether it's political or whatever, especially political nowadays, I'm probably not going to share that regardless because I don't do that on social media. But I like to fact check things. Like, I'm not going to spend an hour going through MSNBC and Fox News and all this different things. But when somebody shares, and I'm saying a meme, it's a screenshot of an article, and it doesn't even tell you what website that article is from.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my gosh, look at this. Like, I'm not trying to boast that I have a podcast that we can type in an article and we can screenshot it and post it anywhere. But I'm in that mindset of
anyone can.
I can go look at something. I never take anything at face value. Maybe it's not a big deal. Who cares if he shares a meme saying this or that? And I go look, oh, he's wrong. I'm not going to go ask that. But it gives you a better understanding of things. Yeah. Don't just believe everything you hear.
Yeah. Well, part of when I was saying that, like, I'm different from you, and that makes me think about the way you're talking about going and researching and looking, and if you come across something and you spend more time, like, you do spend more time reading. You read a lot more than I do. Where I gain that knowledge from, like, a Netflix documentary.
Yeah.
And there's other ways. So don't think, like, we're 100% on board with, even though you tend to carry those values of an older generation that would rather read and look up an article.
You tell me. Look at the book. Well, you can't see on the camera. There's a bookshelf up here. I will buy a physical book. I don't want it. I want the book. I don't want it on a tablet or.
But we're not gonna knock you because I'm the opposite of that. Where I'm a little more into the technology and I'm a little more in with what kids would want to do. Where, I mean, let's be honest. A lot of parents are gonna be pissed if their kids are spending a lot of time on video games, on YouTube, on Netflix. Well,
I was going to mention when you talked about
just watching
kids watching that. My kid, and there's no reason for this to be. I mean, it's something in 10 years the information won't matter.
Yeah.
But he loves playing Minecraft.
Mm-hmm.
And Minecraft, I think if your kid's playing Minecraft, don't knock him for it. It's a very creative game. There's a lot of work that goes into that. And he will want to know how to do something, and he'll go on YouTube and try to figure it out. Yeah. And he's a little naive. He'll Google on his phone, like, speak it, like, how do you do this on Minecraft? I'm like, okay, word it this way so it knows what you're talking about. But he's eager to learn. Like, he does something, and he'll watch this guy on YouTube and he's like, how does he do that? And maybe he's on a video that's way past it. Like, it didn't explain how to do this. He's just doing this. Yeah. So he will go and research how to do that. So don't think... And when I want to learn something, I'm not going to go look up a book how to learn it. Like I said earlier, there's just the double benefit of reading. Reading, forget what you're reading. Yeah. I read more for the fact that it's, sharpening my brain. It helps me. There's a lot more things. I'm not going to go find a book like, oh, this is what I want to learn about. Yeah. I may, maybe like a war book or history book or something. But most of the books I read are more motivational, just to keep you, hey, I want to keep reading this. And I may, there's random facts I learn about a book, but I'm not saying I'm learning any more than you are. When I have an issue, like I said with my grill, I didn't go look for a book on grills. Yeah. Like, YouTube is my resource to go learn it. If I have something in my vehicle, I will YouTube that.
Nowadays, here's the difference. And even for us, it's a little different, but I feel like we adapted well to a lot of the technologies and the things offered to us. There wasn't YouTube back then. Like, for our parents, there wasn't YouTube. There wasn't video games at the level.
And there was a time I remember YouTube. YouTube was a big thing before I ever started. I'm like, okay, yeah, it's
so
YouTube.
You can't knock just because it wasn't available then. It's like, oh, well, we never spent all this time on devices. Yeah. You didn't have devices. You could spend time on it. So how can you knock kids because they are learning from this? They are now. I do limit my kids on, like, if they get a little, or it's like, hey, you know what, take a break from the devices. Let's go do this. Let's go, You have to offer those.
My kid today, we went to the grocery store and we got out and he had his phone. I didn't think about it. Halfway there, I'm like, he's on his phone. I'm like, we're in the parking lot. Get off your phone. And he said, okay. He kept watching. I'm like, quit looking at your phone. I feel like it just took it. Like, here, put it in the. You don't need it in the store anyways. You're going to be not paying attention, walking off. Yeah. But yeah, certain situations, you're like, just get off the phone. Yeah. And
but they're different times, and I mean, it's like we've talked about this tons of times. Every generation thinks a generation, that the next generation is the worst, right?
I don't know if I've ever mentioned it on. I've probably talked to you. I know I've mentioned it 100 times. I don't know if I ever mentioned it on the show, but I remember what I was watching, but they were talking about a newspaper article from it's probably from the early 30s, maybe later 30s, before World War II started or before America got involved in them, talking about that current generation of adults was talking about the teenagers today who are the main 18, 19, 20-year-olds that fought Normandy Beach, fought in World War II, basically saved the world. They talked about how they're lazy, they don't understand them, they're not going to amount to anything, and this generation is what we now refer to as the greatest generation. Yeah. And I think it's just something, part of it is 18, 19, 20, they're stupid, they're idiots, they don't know what they're not motivated about anything.
Before not understanding what they're dealing with.
And I think,
I mean, at a certain point in our life, I'm sure we will eventually get to the point where we look at a generation and we're like, man, they're a bunch of fuck-ups.
I do that now.
Well, but I have empathy for them more so because it was what they were raised in. Yeah. The generation, the grandparents that are talking about essentially the grandchildren, that generation, they're the ones that raised those parents for those parents to raise those kids. I mean, there's where the disconnect is. It's in the parent
I don't know. I mean,
but it's also in the technology we've dealt with. I don't know.
Talk about technology. Like, obviously, it's making things better, easier. Yeah. That's the point of it. How many? Man, I didn't prepare to talk about this, so I'm just thinking of something random. A couple, let's say early 1900s. What technology was going? The vehicle, a car. Like, were there people thinking, like, okay, now whoever the first generation was growing up, who pretty much always had cars, and they didn't really see the transition. Like, oh, they just have it easy. They never knew what it was like to have to go on horses all the time, and
I'm sure it was.
And again, we're talking about new skills. I'm no expert on what years the car were coming in and the transition of horses, and we're talking about World War II. World War One had a lot of new machines coming in, completely different, compared to the Civil War just 40 years earlier. But most of it was fought on horseback. They didn't have tanks and planes like they did in World War II. So how many older military personnel who fought in World War One, who were higher up in World War II, talked about these kids have no idea how easy that we fought literally in trenches, and now they're going bombing people. Like just in that 30-year gap, like.
Yeah, I mean, how easy
fighting
do
in
kids
trenches
have
to
it?
just flying and bombing.
How easy do kids have it now that all of your music is stored right here? They're not flipping out. We were in the generation where we had cassette tapes stored, or I did anyways.
Yeah, we had
cassette tapes.
We were recording
the end of cassette tapes and the beginning of CDs, of having to keep those and switch them out.
I think even in our early...
but I never hate on a kid and be like, oh, you got it so easy. You have... No, you know what? I have it too. I'm going to take advantage of it.
He does have it easy, but I don't think of it as you don't even understand how. Because every generation is like that. Mm-hmm. And there was a funny meme going around. It was a Star Wars meme. It was basically saying, man, your kids have it so easy these days. And it's like, that was part of the plan. You wanted me to have it easier.
Exactly.
And some people want to say, hey, we're going in the wrong direction, everything's getting too easy, which is the plan. But I look at it,
everyone wants their kids to have it better than they had it.
Yeah,
but then they want to complain at the same time.
They worked, I don't even want to say worked harder. Yeah, they worked harder on, it was difficult to watch TV but it's hard to compare because our father worked very hard. I'm not trying to say I worked just as hard as him at all. But in general, the father-son, the son's not working. He's probably working just as hard as the father. He's just doing it a different way because the things that he looks at working harder, it's more efficient these days.
Obviously, aren't at the age, probably in as much of a struggle having to work to make ends meet. We probably do have it better, but we were set up better. So from the outside, it appears like, oh, you got it made. No, we work hard, but we were given a great knowledge base that we could carry in.
Well,
right? Like, we're giving our kids even more, like, everything we knew, plus they're going to learn their own. They're going to have it easier. They're going to be able to utilize things that we can't utilize.
And I think we were in a bit, I mean, I don't know what you want to call it, how we were raised, just the situation we were in with the families we married into. But the millennial generation as a whole has had a tougher time, buying homes and whatever reason you want to give it. A lot of want to tie it to the stigma they're lazy and they don't want to work hard. And they want to be influencers on social media. And I'll tell you, some of those influencers work their ass off. It's not easy. They just found a different way.
Yeah.
Not to get on that, but there are different ways to work hard. That just because I don't have to do that specific thing, when we're struggling, yes, we have cell phones with Facebook and social media, but that's more accessible to us. I mean, my iPhone, you think it's crazy that it's worth $800 or whatever it costs to buy them. Mm-hmm. The first cell phone that came out was probably close to $1,000. VCRs when they came out were $1,000. We could have an entire episode on inflation. Like, yes, inflation and cost of goods, it's a little different because
think about like the first flat screen TV.
Technology gets cheaper as inflation goes up, yes, but the first iPhone is not any cheaper or more expensive, or is not any cheaper than the newer iPhone. But side by side, one's obsolete. Yeah. Because technology gets cheaper as the product does get more expensive. Cars these days are more expensive because all the technology back into them.
Yeah.
But if you break down the value of it, it is cheaper. But things get more efficient. Things get easier. And yes, 40 years ago, if you wanted to learn a new skill, it was a lot more work because you probably had to go get a book on it or take a class, and that class wasn't a class I could log in and do at my own pace at night on my, or it's probably at night, but on my computer at home. I had to go and travel. I mean, bring Toastmasters as an example. There's a lot of different skills you can learn from Toastmasters, and I started right in the middle of COVID. They were on Zoom. Toastmasters is over 100 years old. 40 years ago, if there's a pandemic, we're just not going to have meetings for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, we still go in person,
but expand your knowledge base.
Exactly.
It's not available to you.
And maybe our generation has it a lot easier. I agree we do. I mean, don't fault us for it.
Exactly.
That's what you wanted. But we are much more efficient and learn things at a bigger pace because, back in the day, whatever the day is, that means to you.
Yeah.
That saying in itself, before you read the rest of it, you want to be a master of one because that's all that matters. It doesn't matter about all this other stuff. You're going to waste your time and money learning all these different things because it takes so many more resources than to pick up your phone, Google it. I'm going to jump on Wikipedia and I can learn the entire history of the Dallas Mavericks.
I think
if I wanted to know
learn
in 20 minutes.
This skill, this is something we've practiced our entire life. We've always had something going on. And, I think we learned it from one of the best. Our dad was absolutely like the epitome of a jack of all trades. Mm-hmm. And maybe he wasn't a master in any, but he knew a little bit about everything and had so much knowledge that he could pass on.
You would learn something about his past history of work, like,
yeah.
Oh, yeah, by the way, this is what how did we never know about this? Mm-hmm. Why did it just never came up? Like, you went from this to this to this to this, like...
Could build homes,
individually, any one of those things is interesting.
Yeah.
But, you were basically an aide for a politician into landscaping to building houses to...
Help start a restaurant brand and...
basically non-officially creating Burger King's breakfast menu.
Yeah, it's... Yeah.
There's a lot of different things that... You could say what you want about some people, but the way he learned things, it's difficult to, like I said, to learn things back then than it is now. Again, mm-hmm. He would actually have to go physically and
put in the extra work.
Yeah. Whether it's getting a book or meeting people and talking, which I think in his mm-hmm. instance was where he learned a lot of things and met a lot of people. It's just going out and meeting different people, and it's all about who you know.
Yeah.
Which again, we talk about in the inner circle. It's mm-hmm. You can take a few with Patrick learning about technical stuff. I can ask him. Before I even research, I'm going to ask him. Or you have both of a common friend and who is a plumber.
Yeah.
So it just helps you skip.
Yeah.
A couple of steps, and then you can go and research that and learn that new skill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your inner circle is going to be your go-to, and then beyond that, if they can't help you, then you've it's like a process of elimination.
And I would just take that, forget researching. You just have that person. You ask them a question. Oh yeah, people think this, but this is really the way it is. You're like, mm-hmm. I would have never known that, and right away you're above where
most people
what the average person would be thinking this. Like, well, in this context, yes, that's true, but this is really it.
Yeah.
And right away, like I said, I could, if I'd be watching TV and just have whether I hear something I don't believe or like, I wonder about this, and I can look on my phone and, 30 years ago, like I said, if I wanted to know, the Dallas Mavericks example, their entire history, I get on Wikipedia or whatever website and look up any fact I want to know or Google any fact and have it like that instant, rather than, okay, now I gotta go to the library, let's find a book, okay, this book, is this going to tell me what I need to know? It's just, everything's so more efficient now, so there's no excuse not to have a different skill set. Just learn different things. And I guess because I understood sports as a teenager more than our parents, and it's funny when you're not into something, you think your kids are geniuses at something. If they're into it and you're not, you have no clue.
Yeah. And
our parents weren't really into sports, and I guess they thought maybe I was more of an expert than I was, and that's kind of where the whole broadcasting thing started. Like, you should be on ESPN. Let's figure out how to. And we researched to figure out. Go to American Broadcasting School, which in the long run is really not the way you do it, but I value going to that school because I know so much more.
There's a lot of skills you learn from that, just like the things we're talking about.
And we wouldn't be doing this podcast if it wasn't for that. You have no clue, and or not you, but in general, people have no clue. Like, if
I didn't have a clue. That's why I reached out to you when we talked about it. It was like, hey, I don't know how this works, but do you do?
What honestly, can we do? I didn't know much about podcasting except, okay, a radio show is live, a podcast is pre-recorded. That's about the extent of it, but we understood the equipment and the skill.
And even that, we learned a lot about that throughout the process as well.
Absolutely, and if I tell you, I'm an introvert. I'm a very keep it close to myself person unless I'm really comfortable with you. If I wouldn't have gone through broadcasting school and multiple online radio shows and different things like that, let's just say for whatever reason we say, okay, let's start a podcast. You put this mic in front of me. I'm not going to, even our first few episodes, I probably seemed pretty nervous because it had been a while since I'd been on a mic.
Yeah.
I would have been like, I'm not the right guy for it. I'll help you do whatever you want behind the scenes. I'll help produce or whatever I can help. I'm not an on-air guy.
Yeah.
But which is funny, 6 or 7 years ago, I wouldn't have thought I would have anything to do with being in a sales profession. But like, sales? No, that's not what I would do. I would not guess I would want to do that.
Yeah.
And I slowly transitioned where that's my profession. I work in sales and I do a pretty good job at it. I do this. I've been in Toastmasters for over a year and a half, or well, not near a year and a half. And I mean, at your wedding, I did a best man speech, which was terrifying to me. I don't even know why I said yes to it. But now, if somebody wanted me to give a speech, I'd probably still be pretty terrified. Like, yeah, sure, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I know different skills. Like, I'm sure we go look at my best man speech. It was probably a train wreck, except for a couple of funny things I said. But I could give a professional speech now. I understand why, what goes into that. And I wouldn't consider myself a master. There's people in that class that have been in Toastmasters for 30 years, and they have all these different titles and recognitions. And they are masters. But I probably know more about public speaking or the speeches I've given in the last year and a half. I'm probably more comfortable than the average person.
Yeah.
You may look at me if I give a public speech like, dude, you're an expert.
Yeah.
From your point of view, or not you, but in general, any person, but no, I'm not really. Or somebody who knows nothing about podcasts, we talked about it this week.
Yeah. Like,
oh, that's so badass. You have a podcast.
People tell us all the time, we're like, but it's not that great.
It's not that big a deal. Well, quality-wise, sure. I mean, it's better than some, but just in general, it's not difficult to start a podcast. I mean, the difficulty of actually physically starting it and getting whatever equipment, and I was talking with somebody who's probably going to listen to this episode eventually about starting a podcast. He reached out to me because he knows I have a podcast. The generalization of starting a podcast isn't that big a deal. It's getting here, sitting here, and being able to talk about a subject. We're an hour into the show. Like, yeah, you could, are you going to be comfortable talking on it? Can you talk intelligently, or at least decently, where it would entertain people about a specific subject for that long without trying? And it's something that comes with practice. I mean,
absolutely. Unless
you just have amazing charisma, some people can deal with it better. But in general, we come off having a podcast like, I could never do that. Y'all are great. Y'all must be outgoing, life of the party people, which is furthest from the truth. Maybe in our own family. Yeah, me and you probably in our own families are the craziest people.
Yeah.
But me and you in an outside setting, we're just like reserved. Like, hey, make eye contact with somebody. Oh yeah, I'll talk to you because we're, it's awkward if we don't. But we'll stand in the corner if we don't know anybody. Yeah. And we're very big introverts.
Yeah, exactly. No, a year ago, well, I guess we've been doing this more than a year. A year and a half ago, I would have never signed up for this. If you would have approached me about it, for whatever reason this all came to fruition, it did, and I'm glad it did.
I think I did approach you when we were doing that sports thing, and you were like, yeah, no.
Yeah, it wasn't, it was something. That's probably the hardest part of starting a podcast for anyone, is just pulling the trigger and saying, I'm going to get on here, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I think that's the hardest part.
And if you have something like starting a podcast, or something that, I guess this doesn't seem a big part of our life anymore, but at the time, that was a big decision in our life to start a podcast. But if you have a situation like that, just do it. Don't say like, okay, well, because we were talking about into the summer. We started in March. Into the summer. I just remember you telling me into the summer at the soonest part. Let's not rush into it, which you can say. You don't rush into something when you could, like you said, research something for 4 months and learn a lot more about it. But some things you just have to do it. Mm-hmm. You know, and podcasting is one because and none of this matters. You could figure out the technology part of it, the equipment. All of that is very specific. You do this, it works great. This mic doesn't need to be trained to do anything. Yeah. If you hook it up the right way, it's going to work exactly how it's intended to. Yeah. But we needed to start because we needed to get the jitters out.
Our first couple episodes were terrible. They were rough.
And people tell us that's not the case. We're like, well, I didn't notice, but we knew in our minds, and we can actually decipher the difference. And if you compare, it was bad. But there's experience that goes into it. Having the presence of it makes a difference.
The comfort that we can get on here and not have a script
and research all you want, and you're not going to get that presence or that comfortability. Yeah. Like you could research everything about being an electrician and know everything and be able to go in there and ace a test, but that's not how it works. I mean, you take a test, but you have to be an apprentice for a while to do this. And you have a time period you have to work at it because you don't just take the test and you go in there, okay, I understand this.
Even though it's not official with podcasting, it kind of still is. I mean, we're still in our apprenticeship type level of this game. I mean, we're still learning. We're still, expanding and growing, and for our expectations, it's above and beyond. Yeah. But to compare us to other podcasts, we're still a long ways off. So,
and you have in your mind when you want to start something big in your life, and you have it in your mind, of course you're going to be motivated. And I'm going to do this. At least for me, in my mind, it's like I don't want it to be a situation where we do it and we stop. Yeah. And I'm thinking chances are we're probably going to start it and just kind of it's going to fade away. Yeah. I mean, if you told me what are the chances before we started this podcast that we were a year and a half from now, we'd still be going strong, if not even better. I mean, we have so many future plans and things going on that we don't need to mention, but there's a lot of big things coming. If you say, okay, what are the chances you're going to be here a year and a half doing it better than ever or stopping after a couple episodes? It's more like, we have full-time jobs and lives, and chances are we're probably going to get too busy and it's just going to go away. Yeah. And a couple of times we thought that might be the way it's going. We miss a couple weeks early on, and I mean, I'll tell you, for the last at least 6 months to a year, probably even longer than that because we're in June now, last 8 to 10 months, that's never been a thought in my mind. Yeah. Maybe unmotivated to do some things, but maybe the first few months I'm like, man, I'm worried. We haven't done, we hadn't talked about it. But back then we were talking about it a lot more. Like we have to have prep and research. And not that we don't prep and research now, but it's just like, okay, we're talking about that. Okay. Mm-hmm. I'll figure out my angle on it, what I feel about it, and we're just going to go on and do it. And like you said, you have an iPad in front of you that you mentioned 2 quotes just so you wouldn't butcher them. Yeah. That's, if you're on YouTube looking, there's no notes on our desk. There's nothing. I tell you, the first couple episodes, scripts we printed out. We had everything. When I talk about this, you're going to do this. You're going to, put your this point is real. Yeah. The first couple episodes, I'm not saying it's not real. We didn't lie or. That was really our opinion. It
was we would create a sheet, and
it's like when I say this, you don't say this till I say this.
I would go back in and I would put my points in between, and we would follow that line by line. And it was just at that time that was the level we had to be at to gain this comfort.
But even at that time of learning that skill, like we said, once we got past episode 6 or 7 or 9 or whatever the statistic was. That's over 1% of all podcasts. Yeah. Less than, or about 1% make it past that episode 6, 7, or 9. I don't have the stat in front of me. But that's mind-blowing. But all the podcasts you see on, if you're a podcast person, which I assume you are, you're listening to a show, if you're on Spotify or Apple or whatever, there's a lot of podcasts there. But how many you don't see because they did 1 or 2 episodes and they stopped?
Didn't make it, yeah.
Yeah, because it's, like I said, it's not overly difficult to start a podcast. You have to work hard. You have to do the research and understand, or if you know somebody like us, if you know who we are at a personal level, and you say, hey, how do I start a podcast? Like, glad you asked. Easier than you ever think.
Yeah, it really is.
And I feel it's that way with most skills. Like, it's not as hard as you think to start or understand it, but once you understand
starting it,
it's way beyond. You know, we could talk. Starting a podcast isn't overly difficult, but podcasts in general, it's very complex. But once you start that, it's, you know, we learn new things every day, or we'll hear a new podcast like, hey, I never thought about doing that, or, you know, that's a good idea or good point. And it's just something that comes with learning new skills and expanding those skills. And I wanted to mention earlier, but it never came up, or a natural spot never came up in a book I'd read. Like I said, reading books are always random facts. If you want to talk about being an expert or a master, there is an actual physical number to get to, and they talk about 10,000 minutes. If you can spend 10,000 minutes, you know, playing an instrument, that's when you really become an expert or a master. So there actually is a measurement to it. But just learning a new skill, I'm not saying you have to commit. You know, if you want to learn to play guitar, you don't have to be Led Zeppelin or anything.
Yeah.
You just learn how to play guitar, you can play a couple of songs, and that suits you. That's
and
great
you're
for you.
probably the only guy at the party that knows how to pick up a guitar.
Exactly. How many people can pick up a guitar and play? You know, there's that mindset, oh, the guy pick up a guitar and he attracts all the ladies. It's because not very many people can do it.
Yeah.
You know, not trying to take away from, you know, we're not talking about pro football here, but most people can play football or basketball. It's not hard to make a sports team in high school. It's because a lot of people do it. There's nothing to take away from it. It's hard to be the captain or the best player. But as I say, if it's easy to do, everybody's doing it. I talked about it when my last job, when I sold lumber to home builders. I never got discouraged when I would call 3 or 4 times, send emails, and I still haven't earned their business. I don't want to earn it that easy. If I earn it that easy, I'm going to lose it that easy. You know, I had a conversation with somebody, and they brought up a point. Like, if I'm going to be cheated, if you're cheating with me, you're probably going to cheat on me. Like, well, that's pretty forward, but that makes sense. If it's that easy to get, it's because if everybody's doing it, it's because it's that easy to get.
Yeah.
You know, and not that I'm saying don't go after those skills, but the real skills that are going to take a little bit of time, a little bit of research, you're going to have to set time aside to do them. They're all worth it because nobody does them. You know, if working out was easy and losing weight was easy and being built was easy, we wouldn't have an issue in this country with obesity. Everybody would be built and strong, and, you know, things like this or reading, if all that was easy right off the bat, everybody would be doing it. So that's, if you want to take anything from this episode, is we're just going to challenge you to learn a new skill.
Yeah, go out today and at least make a plan to learn a skill this week.
You know,
spend this week in the evenings, in the mornings, on your lunch breaks, go out and learn a new skill.
And that's great if that's something you want to learn. But I've done it before. I've Googled top skills to know, or what should guys in their 30s know. I'm 31. Like what's something I should know? And I'll look. Hey, I don't know how to do that. Maybe I should learn how to do that. There's a reason.
Yeah.
You know, and message us on what skills you think are valuable to learn that aren't nearly as hard as they seem, like podcasting, or what's something you want to learn. Message us, and you know, we can talk about that, get in dialogue about that. But until next episode, I'm Ashton.
And I'm Tony.
Let's see y'all next time.